Hello, and welcome to the Keen Decision Systems ReveNew podcast. I am Greg Dolan, CEO and co-founder here at Keen, and I have the privilege of welcoming another expert to our podcast, Liz Mayer, who is a partner at the Partnering Group. The Partnering Group is a really close partner of Keen's. We do a lot of work together, and we see the world in much the same way. I am here to talk to Liz a bit about a very important topic as the market evolves. She heads up Omni-channel commerce at the Partnering Group and is working with a lot of clients in the CPG industry who are trying to drive change as the market evolves. And change management is a key piece whenever disruption occurs, and we're seeing a lot of disruption. And can't wait to get Liz's perspective on what she's seeing with her clients. But before we jump in, just want to turn it over to Liz and have her introduce herself, and then we can jump into the conversation.
Well, Greg, thanks so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here, and thank you for the introduction. Yes, I am with the Partnering Group, which is a retail and CPG growth consultancy. And ultimately, my focus there is omni-channel marketing, but it's all facets of omni-channel marketing, right? It's the strategy, it's the structure. We do a lot of training. We do a lot of work in relation to just commerce marketing overall, to enable, how CPGs and our clients should be thinking about retail media, how they should be thinking about different sales activities to support that, planning, you name it. And really, I'm a CPG girl through and through. So I started my career on the agency side. The agency is now Geometry Global, or probably actually has changed name since. I think it's VML NYR. And I was really knee deep in the Kimberly-Clark account. And this is dating me, but at the time, it was referred to, shopper marketing was referred to as co-marketing. So that's also...
I remember those days, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So don't guess my age, but that's about the time on the timeline. And I spent nearly 13 years at the J.M. Smucker Company, which was such an amazing experience and opportunity. I was able to ultimately develop their omni-channel commerce marketing practice. There was no shopper marketing when I joined there. I had the privilege of developing that practice for the company. I also did a stint in brand marketing and also led a lot of the commercial transformations there. So everything from customer development transformation when we were standing up the market development organization to the end-to-end consumer engagement model that ultimately drove really collaboration and seamless interchange across all facets of the marketing and media mix. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, it's amazing how much change has occurred in the last 20 years. And you seem like you've been on the front lines for all of it. So can't wait to get your perspective on what the world is giving us today. For me, I always refer to what you just talked about as kind of the evolution and complexity that has emerged in marketing and the environment and across media. So when I started, probably around the same time you did in CPG, it was pretty easy to make decisions around where you invest. Right? It's a lot of traditional channels, and then you get into the early 2000s, and you start seeing digital channels becoming more prevalent, and then everything just exploded. You have in-store activation, shopper marketing. Now what I call the roaring 20s, we have retail media, and pretty much every customer has their own retail media network, which is, I know, something that you're focused on. And it's happening so fast that it becomes disruptive to organizations when they're not set up organizationally to be able to support that change. So would love to get your perspective on when you talk to your clients and you recognize that their organization is not set up to support the type of execution that you're recommending. How do you approach that with your client? How do you address that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm gonna answer in a way that everybody probably might cringe when I say that, but it depends is the first thing, right? Which is like your typical, it depends. Of course, it depends on the climate of the organization. I think the other thing to keep in mind whenever we're talking about broaching the right structure in that topic, I think the question that we often sometimes ask, and we kind of joke about, is would you like your growth with a side of change, right? Because what is going to be required, in this disruptive age is a totally different mindset, often different ways of working, often different talent and training and capabilities than was ever required 15, 20 years ago, where a lot of CPGs, especially larger CPGs, could basically bank on, hey, we're a household name, we have this heritage. If we get our trade right and we're on television and we have continuity there, we're golden. It's not the same, right?
That was the late 90s model, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And in some instances, 2000s for a lot of the larger, brands, but you're exactly right. So again, your question in relation to like, how do we start bridging these topics with structure? And I think the thing to remember anytime we're thinking about structure is it's so easy to jump to structure because it's so tangible, right? Our approach always is to discuss and get everybody on the same page with what is the strategy? Because if you can put strategy in front of structure and there's true understanding and alignment to the strategy, and the strategy is ultimately supported by the ways of working, the understanding, if everybody's aligned to that, where does the company want to go? How do they want to grow? Where do they play? How do they win? If we're able to answer those things, then structure is a lot easier and comes out, a lot sooner in those conversations, and it's a little less painless.
Yeah, I think the folks at Keen are tired of hearing me saying that strategy drives structure, drives staffing. That's the, right. When you get I totally agree that when you get the strategy right, the structure should reveal itself to you, and it should make sense of the type of talent that you need to be able to execute that strategy. So really, really interesting. I mean, obviously, a lot of companies are a long way from realizing that they need to change and don't know what to do to really drive the organizational change, which is where you guys come in. So I'm sure you see a lot of resistance in terms of having that conversation with leaders in the marketing organizations of big CPG companies. How do you handle that with senior leadership? How do you approach it?
Great question.
What are the key challenges that you're facing?
Well, it's a great question. I think the place where the partnering group ultimately comes in, and one of the advantages of the partnering groups model is all of the partners, all of the consultants at the partnering group, we've actually done the work. We've been in their shoes, we've been in their seats, we've been practitioners. Mm-hmm. So we know the pressure that they feel, we know the frustration, and it's oftentimes very scary, right? And vulnerable for these companies and these leaders, to say this is what needs to be done, and maybe I need to change, and maybe I need to move, or maybe there's been mistakes made. So I think the fact that we've done the work, so they don't necessarily have to as much. We can get into the weeds. We can get into the detailed process mapping because we really know what drives the step change. So I think it's first really establishing that credibility and trust and ensuring that, ultimately our clients, feel heard. And then I think the other thing that we do is we not only obviously want to understand where that organization is, where do they want to go, how close are they to getting to where they want to be, and really being able to benchmark, for these executives, where are they today, and then really honing in on the work. What is the work required to get them from point A to point B? Because ultimately, when you're clear in the work, then you can be clear on the jobs to be done. Then you can be clear, obviously on where the strategy needs to evolve. And then the org design work effortlessly, oh gosh,
I got
flows, right? Easily flows out of there. And I think, with those phases, we can ultimately have some great conversations with our clients in relation to what is the desired performance. Like, you're here today, where do you want to be? Is where you want to be right for the timelines you have for your growth goals? And again, getting into and assessing those strategies, understanding even everything from their job descriptions and how they're rewarding and awarding performance, all of those components, the culture, right? Is their culture ready for this disruption and this change? And we help get them there as well. And so addressing that entire landscape and doing so in a way that we are relating to our clients because we've been there, and that we're bringing them on the change journey with us. And also saying, we know that your North Star is here. These are the steps you need to take in the way you look at the work and how you think about the people and how you've evolved your strategy, and what resources you need, and then eventually, obviously, structure to enable that.
Awesome. Couldn't agree more. And I think even, backing up a bit before strategy, you mentioned North Star and having a big vision and understanding where the market's going and how you're going to be able to compete better in the future and what it's going to take to get there. Of course, they may need some help to understand all the steps needed to get there, but it all starts with, does the CMO or the CEO have a vision for how the organization will operate within a new external environment, new marketplace, evolving marketplace? And it just reminds me of a conversation I had with a Fortune 500 CMO a couple weeks ago, where she said, right now, 70 to 80% of the work that we're doing is being done by human capital. Right, so all the decisions we're making it's all human effort. Right. Within the next 5 years, we want 70 to 80% of our decisions to be made in an automated way. So that's the kind of vision and structure that has to change, and the people. If you think about all the talent that's needed to enable that, leverage the technology and the data that's available to enable that vision to come to fruition.
Absolutely.
One of the things obviously that's changing in the marketplace pretty rapidly, as we talked about before, is the emergence and the amount of budget that's going to retail media. And I know that's an area that's you're really focused on. And again, organizations aren't set up to really look at it in a holistic way right now. So you're just curious about how change management and the emergence of retail media as key channels for marketers can consider, how is that kind of impacting them? What kind of work are you doing to help them to understand how to manage that piece of the business, integrate it, and make it part of how they think about marketing overall?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I think when we think about retail media, you think of how most CPGs ultimately are set up. A lot of the larger CPGs, even midsize, have pretty mature shopper marketing organizations, right? And the shopper marketing organizations have been over time very used to kind of doing their own thing, running alongside. In some instances, a lot of these teams report to sales. They might not even report into brand. And so with the emergence of retail media, all of a sudden, not only are the tools and the targeting and the capabilities enhancing, that are largely within the retailer space and in a lot of instances on desks of shopper marketing teams. You also then have the fact that the digital shelf is also, requiring brands to think about how they build brands differently, and the scope of brand management's changing. So, where a CPG used to put a ton of time into ensuring that their packaging is beautiful and stands out on the physical shelf, they need to spend equal or more amount weighting how they show up digitally. And so much of how they show up digitally is related to how they're leveraging their retail digital media. And so, where a lot of CPGs might be very used to thinking, well, I have shopper people who do this, and I have maybe even a separate digital team or a digital agency who does that. What we're really focusing on with a lot of our clients is ensuring that they have a holistic approach. And what that means is retail media isn't something that you just consider as lower funnel anymore, right? It's not just about, okay, well, when we're ready for purchase, we do that. Or when we want to partner with Walmart, we're doing this, or Albertsons, we're doing that. Really, organizations have to move beyond just looking at retail media as this tactical element that is maybe owned by just the shopper marketing team or the digital commerce team as a tactical extension, and really need to understand how are the properties and the engagements within a Walmart or a Target ecosystem and that media, how is that working in relation to what I could be doing with NBC media, right? I mean, these retailers are having their own upfronts, and these retailers are also making, this investment a cost of doing business. So I think, again, what we're really driving in terms of dialogue with our existing clients is really there is no lower funnel and upper funnel. It's all buy now. It's in a robust commerce ecosystem. Even thinking about the consumer or shopper as different, obviously it's different if it's a pet, right. Or a baby product, or maybe perfume, that you're buying as a gift, for someone else. But ultimately, it's about thinking of retailer media as media, and then thinking about the implications on the business side of that retailer media as well, right? So
right, absolutely.
What marketing organizations need to do is they need to understand their business from a customer and category perspective, as well as how they want to engage with their shoppers, and bring those together to make the right decisions. And that requires different ways of working, different strategies, and ultimately different tools and resources.
Right. Couldn't agree more. I think one of the things that has struck me on that timeline from the late 90s to now is the retailer has gotten more and more leverage in the relationship. Right. And it already had a lot of leverage, when I started my career, the Walmarts of the world. But it was all done through trade. And then to your point, it was co-marketing and then shopper marketing and now media, retail media. And it's really difficult to have a unified approach when you're separating the budget between that shopper marketing and trade spending and the retail media that funnels up through to the chief sales officer, yeah. And then everything else is funneling up to a CMO. Especially now that have different distribution channels, and e-com is growing, particularly accelerating after COVID, and all of this is coming on really quickly, right? And it requires pretty dramatic change in terms of how the marketers approach it, but also I think it's an opportunity for marketers to potentially take back some of that leverage in the relationship, because if they're able to look holistically and understand and bring data to the table to justify spend and understand how much Walmart media is actually going to be impacting the business and the rest of the business, and is it better to take it away from a traditional media campaign and put it into retail media when you have to make sure every dollar works as hard as possible for you. So the omni-channel approach has to happen. You have to be more sophisticated from a measurement perspective. You need to be a lot more agile, and you need to be able to have tools. I'll give ourselves a self-plug here, like ours, where you can look holistically across the entire marketing mix, across different channels, traditional retail versus e-com, and be able to make decisions that are best for the business and support your growth goals, based on where you're going to be putting your dollars, like what's going to work the hardest for the business. And without that, you're going to be wasting a lot of money on channels, or giving a lot more money to the retailer that may not be warranted, and that's going to come at the expense of dollars that could be working harder elsewhere.
That's right. And I think the thing that we also, ensure that we're instilling within a lot of our clients is, when you're thinking of retail media and a dollar spent in retail media, it's about ensuring, all of the things that you discussed, right? It's ensuring, that you really understand that the system, the cost benefit, right? The opportunity cost of a dollar spent here, you can't place that somewhere else where it could be tried and true. I think the other thing with retailer media that's important is really understanding what we often refer to as the intangibles, the return on relationship. So in some instances, you might be thinking, oh gosh, this retailer media ecosystem is not getting as many eyeballs. But if it helps you get merchandise, if it helps you solidify distribution, those are some of those intangibles that need to be weighted across, say, a traditional, Facebook campaign, for example. Mm-hmm. And so I think the distinctions there are really important. And that really requires marketers to, again, understand not just where is the shopper shopping, but also, what do I need to get from these retailer exchanges in order to ensure that my business is still growing and that I'm hitting my growth objectives.
Absolutely. It always comes back to, what are you trying to achieve as a business? Right. And then how do you leverage the dollars that are available to best achieve those goals? And that's really where we focus as well. I think the other piece is being able to understand, to your point, those interaction effects are key, right? So if the return on the relationship is real, if you're going to lose distribution as a result of not supporting a retailer program, then that becomes an easy decision, because that's going to start to erode your base and it's going to impact the rest of your business. So, I think, again, having an omni-channel approach, a perspective on how all the dollars work together and kind of halo off of each other in order to support whatever goal you're looking to achieve.
Yeah. And ultimately, that's requiring, to an extent, a lot of cross-pollination, right? So you need marketers that understand sales. You need marketers that are really well-versed in the digital shelf. And then you need shopper marketers in many ways to understand media. And then you also need sales, who are oftentimes taking these requests and getting the letters of, we're requiring X percent, of media spend. They ultimately also can benefit from understanding the role of media. And so that's where I believe, when we're talking about change management, the formal competency training is critical, even at a foundational level, ensuring that anyone who is having these touch points with, and talking points with the customer and the shopper and consumer, they ultimately understand, these fundamentals at all levels. It makes, really the business decisions and actually the strategic implementation that much better.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought it back to change management, because that's really what it's all about. When you have, some of your dollars coming up through marketing, some coming up through sales, it's really difficult to look holistically when there's those sandboxes. So curious, what's the optimal structure to manage retail media and be able to support the business holistically?
Yeah. So again, the answer.
It depends.
It depends. The answer always depends. So I think a couple things we look at. We obviously always want to look at the size of the company. You have some companies that have huge centers of excellence, huge teams, and maybe there's large brand teams, large centers of excellence, large agencies that are enabling both and empowering both. But all of that needs to be taken into account. You also have then organizations that are they're small, they're startup. We know that we've seen this growth in digitally native brands on the CPG side, and they're lucky if they ultimately even have individuals that are solely focused on shopper marketing. And I think the thing that's important to understand is the challenges and those obstacles, while they can be like, oh, we're too big to change, or we're too small, we don't have the resources, those actually can be enablers, as long as you know what is your strategy and where are you going, to win, and ultimately what do you need to continue to develop the talent in accordance to where you want your growth to come from and where your goals are. So I think, when we're talking about retail media in relation to, structure, I think the principles that we really look for is ensuring that wherever that organization is, whether it's a center of excellence, whether it's a brand, team, whether it's a really end-to-end, integrated marketing organization, it's that they have the competencies to understand in-store and digital. They understand how to look at the business at a retailer level and how to look at the retailer's business across category. And ultimately, they're emphasizing elements of cross-pollination and collaboration across the organization. So the more siloed and the more complicated and the more matrixed structures are, oftentimes the harder it is for companies to support retail media, because you have so many different touch points. Mm-hmm. The more integrated the strategy, the activation, and ultimately the measurement, the better the results are going to be for these organizations.
Yeah, and we've seen clients that have done both. My uneducated opinion in this area is that I've seen where both e-com and retail media and those pieces all funnel up to the CMO. It's a spend decision across how do you support the brand. And we have some clients that remain siloed, and there may be 30% of the budget that the CMO has no visibility to at all, and is not included in any of their measurement. Right, so you're doing a traditional marketing mix, which is not what we do. Like, we would want to have the whole piece together.
Exactly.
But they're missing 30% of their spend when they're doing the analysis. And I'm not sure how you get a good understanding of what's working and what's not. And even more importantly, how you make decisions from there if you're not seeing the full picture. Yeah. And I think, to your point, if it's matrixed or siloed, it's really difficult to have that cross-pollination and collaboration necessary to make the right decisions.
Well, the other thing, too, that we're obviously seeing with the leaders in this area are more unified commercial organizations, right? Mm-hmm. And so, ensuring that whoever that lead decision maker is, they have an understanding of what's happening, at the top line and what's growing top line as well as bottom line. And they're able to ultimately own all of those levers within the marketing, and the sales capacity. And sure, they might have specialized teams that, are specialized in digital shelf, or specialized in terms of media, or specialized even in relation to sales. However, you need, more of these unified commercial organizations that are looking at the business end to end, looking at the customer investments end to end, and looking at the media selections end to end. And the more that is enabled through a vertical integration, that the easier it is to implement those changes.
Right. Again, it comes back to strategy and then structure, right, and then staffing and getting the right talent on board to be able to deliver the strategy. This has been an unbelievably great conversation. I wish we could have another half an hour or hour to keep talking, but I want to thank you for contributing to this. If there's anything you want to leave the audience with before we close up, what would it be?
It comes to strategy. It comes down to strategy. Really, ultimately being able to answer the question, where do I want to grow? Where do we want to grow? Where is that growth going to come from? And who do we want to grow with in terms of channels? And then the activities, the structures, it comes from there. And obviously, and
the tools.
Yeah, and the tools, of course. And I think, again, shameless plug, we have such a great partnership, with Keen, but really, it's so magical when the practitioners from the partnering group can come together with the technology and the experts on the Keen side to really enable that evolved level of thinking and implement that strategy, into new ways of working and winning for our clients. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Love the partnership, and can't wait to continue to evolve and innovate with the partnering group. So Liz, thank you very much for being part of ReveNew. It's been amazing, and hopefully we just continue to see our partnership grow, and good luck to you and everything that you guys are doing at the partnering group, because it's really important work.
Yes,
so thank you.
Thanks for having me. I am honored to be here, and obviously a big fan of Keen. So thank you so much, Greg.
All right. Thanks, Liz.